Yo, my hair looks stupid, I need a haircut. Origin name Dark Viper? I normally just direct people to the video, but I'm not sure the video even exists anymore. I had the name Darkbane on a WoW World of Warcraft private server. In the 5th grade, I made myself a username for a Hotmail account, which was GameViper3. And so later on, I combined the two together to make Dark Viper. My original name was DarkViperAU until I tried to make the name DarkViperAU into GTA Online, and Rockstar was like, you can't use 88. And I was like, what? Why? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. And someone on Twitter was like, yo, it's because like 88 is associated with Nazis. And I was like, oh shit, I actually didn't know that because I'm Australian and that's not a thing here. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll change my name, the 88 my name. And I was adamant. I was like, I will not become DarkViperAU. Actually, it's weird. It just leaves open the possibility of the Dark Vipers from other regions that I got like fight for supremacy. Don't like it. The other top speedrunner at the time was named Torix LV. His name being Torix and LV being where he's from, Latvia. And I did a poll with all my viewers, like, what's my name gonna be? Variations of different Viper and Dragon and stuff, because I had like a few Dragon emotes at the time. So I was gonna be Gold Dragon, Diamond Dragon, Dark Dragon. But then I saw this guy named Fifi had Red Dragon emotes. And Red Dragon was like his thing, and I was like, well then I guess I can't really have Red Dragon emotes, so I guess I'll just keep the name that I have. Especially because people know me by that already, because I have like 8,000 followers. And then I just went with DarkViperAU, and that's what we have now. For those who don't know, there is now A/B testing for titles as well as thumbnails. So before you could just test thumbnails, but now you can test titles as well. So for example, on my all abilities video, I did how fast can you beat GTA 5 if everyone has all abilities? How fast can you beat GTA 5 if Michael, Trevor, and Franklin have all abilities? How fast can you beat GTA 5 with all abilities? Now I would have assumed like, no, actually, I had no idea which one would go better, but this one got significantly more watch time, as in it got more clicks and people watched the video longer for this title than these two. It does suck that you can't test thumbnails and titles independent of each other. You have to put like a pair. So you could do 3 different thumbnails and 3 different titles, and if one succeeds, you don't know if it's because of the thumbnail and you don't know if it's because of the thumbnail or if it's because of the title or both, you know? Regardless though, this testing is awesome. Does the Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster fix Red Dead Redemption 2? Does the Red Dead Redemption remaster fix the problems of Red Dead Redemption 2? Is the Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster better than Red Dead Redemption 2? And this one, having the problems in the title, the problems of, got way more watch time. Because normally you think a shorter title would do better, but no. I do look at my Reddit quite a bit, especially because I'm now not on Twitter all that much. So for example, someone posted this. I have been avoiding any Red Dead Redemption spoilers for years just to be ruined by a person who plays GTA slightly faster than normal. One of the titles that I was trialing was Arthur died for this. Was it worth it? Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster. And I didn't think much about this, honestly, when I made the title. It was one suggested by Glow, as a matter of fact, just a person who helps me with stuff. Someone reached out to me and they said that they didn't like that it was a spoiler in the title. I looked in the comments and there was at least 5 people who made the same complaint. And this led to a long discussion here on Reddit as to whether it was justified for me to have this title. A year is what I consider the don't spoil time period. After that, you can't really expect anyone to walk on eggshells just because someone did not play the game. Because it has been 7 years. You're like, TB is a meme and shit. Like, there are so many memes about it, and it's been discussed to death. I'm not sure it's on the same level as Snape kills Dumbledore exactly, or the dude is dead the whole time in The Sixth Sense or whatever, but I think it's a fairly well-known ending. And certainly if you play Red Dead Redemption 1, both via my commentary and the game suggested that Arthur is gone. I wonder where. And obviously, as we've discussed before, spoilers don't necessarily ruin the experiences of media. I've seen the studies of this before, so I just looked it up in ChatGPT because it's easier. The consensus today isn't spoilers make stories better or spoilers ruin everything, but rather it depends on the story form, the type of spoiler, and the audience's preferences. The problem though in this case was that I wasn't giving people the choice as to whether or not they were going to be spoiled. They would just be spoiled if they happened to get recommended the video. But again, it was 7 years ago. So Skyline says, I got spoiled Red Dead Redemption 2 ending, but I didn't know how Arthur died, so it got me curious to know how it happened. I also heard that Arthur died, or that he got TB and died. And I said at the time, like, had I known that when I played Red Dead 2 the first time, I think I would have stuck it out and actually finished the game, because I would have known that everything that was happening was leading up to something. But that could just be me. At the end of the day, I did change the title just because I don't want to cause a ruckus or whatever. The title wasn't that important. I just didn't think there was enough practical reason for me to have that particular title. There were other titles I could use that would be equally as effective. But you can see, like, in this conversation, I have talked about it because there's a practical reason for me to. I couldn't have this discussion unless I talked about these story elements. But yes, that was kind of the controversy. So a lot of people wanted me to speak about this game that's coming out called An Answer. Like, I don't know what I could say that hasn't already been said. People were like, yo, it contains so much stuff from so many other games. So like you can see here, the minimap here looks exactly like GTA 5 and the character switching. It took a little bit long to load. I don't think people will be happy about that, but like, wait, so this is Father, Son, and Three's Company coming up? Oh, so yeah, like Father, Son, like mission. This is like Watch Dogs. What was the next one? It was 51. Oh, so this Three's Company. Yeah. Apparently the game is like, as Stephen He says here, which genre is the game? Yes. What inspired you to make this game? Everything. So it has like Spider-Man, Watch Dogs, GTA, Persona, I think, where they're just taking like the best ideas from those games and mashing them together. And it's all animeified. And what do you want me to say about this? This is a free-to-play game, if I remember correctly. A gacha game. So this could all be complete nonsense. It's going to depend on, you know, you have to wait to release to see what it actually has and stuff. I suppose if you want to get some attention, just ripping off bigger popular games is one way to do it. And if you want stuff in your game that works, you can just take stuff that works from other games. Like, generally speaking, what you expect to happen is for devs to be inspired by other games and to, you know, put their own twist on stuff, to make something distinct with a specific theme and passion behind it. Given that these devs are just ripping so many different types of game mechanics from so many different types of games and mashing them all together, I don't think this was done with like a coherent game design idea and was more just grab anything popular and put it in to make money. Like when Power World came out and it was very similar to Pokemon, I think I condemn that less because they did put their own spin on that, right? There did seem to be some passion and coherence idea that they wanted to make in their game. Not that I justify everything that Power World did. This is a long time ago, who even remembers? But I don't think this is being done with like some passionate vision behind it. It does look fun. Yeah, I might give it a go when it comes out. We'll see. Do I think they'll have the same fate as Power World? I mean, Power World is still around and they're still making content. They still got 24,000 people playing it. Like is this still good numbers? And at a peak at 50K, this is good numbers. Do you mean, will they get sued? I doubt it. Like, I guess it would depend on how much the mechanic, any individual mechanic here is trademarked or whatever. I don't know the law enough to really say. Like, I'd be surprised if this wasn't against the law in some ways, right? In the same way that like the Nemesis system that was used in Shadow of Mordor it was a mechanic that was like everyone loved, where individual enemies can like fight and grow stronger with you. You know what I'm talking about? They patented that. And so no one's been able to use it. And people are mad about that, obviously. Because copyright is something that you get just via the act of creation. You get it as a baseline. It is something that you don't have to apply for. Trademarks you need to apply for, as is the case with patents. But I mean, Rockstar patents all their stuff that they're working on. A lot of the stuff that people found out about GTA 6 early was from the patents that they made in regards to how NPCs and AI interact with the world and all that jazz. So it wouldn't surprise me if Rockstar had some patents related to like the character switching here. And assuming that they did have, again, not a lawyer, but I would assume that me, a layman, a person not specifically looking and trying to find GTA 5-esque stuff in games, that I can look at this and go, oh, that's GTA 5. That's probably going to be enough for a court of law to do the same, right? A reasonable person who understood GTA 5 mechanics would recognize GTA 5 here. With that being said, would I want Rockstar to sue people for this? No, I would not. I am totally cool with people being inspired by other people's ideas to, you know, take them and twist them and make them in their own games to make something good, right? The only potential problem I have with this game is, again, it just seems like a cash grab. Like they don't actually have a vision of something they want to make. It's just throw in all the popular things, which kind of lame. They aren't innovating on the idea, they're just copying the idea. With that being said, the game clearly isn't a GTA 5 clone or a GTA 6 clone, but that's in large part because of all the other stuff it rips off all the other games. I created something original because I, ripped off 1/6 of my game from over here, 1/6 from over here, 1/6 from over here, 1/6 from over here. And now that I have, 6 things I've ripped off, I have a new thing. And in a way, kind of, right? What I'm saying is I'm not overly fussed about this. It's more funny to me than anything else. I think it's fine until they start stealing assets. Yeah, stealing assets is a bit worse. And certainly, I suppose, if you're stealing code, if you're stealing the actual implementation of the mechanics rather than just the idea. Whether there's a difference under the law is a separate question, but in terms of my judgment of things, stealing a person's work is different from stealing, ideas. Ideas sometimes should still be protected, but it's a lot more ambiguous to me compared to actually stealing, just copy-pasting someone's stuff somewhere else, Whose video was I watching before? Where, Nintendo is constantly defending the game mechanics and stuff in their games, but they themselves didn't invent those game mechanics. They existed in games before Nintendo used them, It's like when you are in university and they say you can use other people's work, but you have to reword it enough. I don't think that's exactly what they say. You gotta put stuff in your own words. The difference, as I often say, is between taking someone else's essay, submitting it to university, but giving your thoughts on it in the margins and stuff, oh, I really like this, or here's what I think about this, and and you submit that, versus writing your own essay after reading someone else's, interpreting it based on your understanding, bringing together multiple different things to make something that's different from all the original source material. When you read an essay in university, it will give you all the sources at the bottom, but no aspect of that essay will be a copy paste from any of the sources. Do I miss my old house? No, but yes. It was the first real home that I had outside of leaving my parents, right? Or leaving my mother's house. It wasn't the first place I moved out to. I moved out when I was when did I move out, guys? 24? Something? Earlier than that? I don't know. But regardless, I moved into this very shitty house, but just coincidentally because of where it was, it had the best internet in Australia. So the house was made 100 years ago, but it had the best internet. And so I streamed from there for a little while. But then I found a much better place, which was the previous place that I was living. And I rented there for 6 years. And then I bought the place off the owner when I was a bit more successful. And so I stayed there for about 10 years. So the entire significant portion of my career, my blowing up on the internet and stuff, all that happened at that house. So it is kind of sad to no longer be able to go there, right? Everything is out of order. In the early days of my career, I didn't have that much of a filing system on my PC. So the most important files would be ordered, but nothing else would. And then I got into a situation where I started to keep everything because you never know exactly what file name will need to sync with what project and stuff. And editors were sending me the same files, but they were on slightly different names on their PCs. So I ended up getting a huge amount of duplicate files. And I didn't want to chuck them out again because I thought, one day I might need to reconstruct a project from 2019 or something. So I ended up having 100 terabytes of duplicate files. It probably wasn't that much, but yeah, basically I had 100 terabytes of duplicate files or thereabouts. And yesterday I was I need to deal with this. So I said to AI, look, if a file name is the same, ignoring modifiers like _1 or in brackets 1, and the date is the same down to the second, remove the duplicates. Because I figured that would confirm that they're the same file. They got the same name and the exact same date to the second that they were created had to be the same. After that, I asked for it to do another one where it was, if the file name, file size, and length is the same, ignoring the date, just keep the newest file by date and move all the rest out. And running this script in these folders enabled me to remove a fuck ton of duplicates. I checked randomly different files to make sure these were actually duplicates and it was doing the correct thing. But yeah, it was very efficient. So while AI, as I keep saying, does hallucinate a ridiculous amount, it does suck in 1,000 different ways, its ability to throw together this kind of code has helped me out in quite a few things. So I wrote something on Twitter yesterday. In light of people's speculation that a person may have died, I wanted to reiterate my stance in regards to the controversial idea of celebrating people's deaths. I have long maintained it is justifiable to celebrate the death of those who have actively worked to harm others for their own benefit, even if people disagree who fits into this category. Being thankful for less harm and having hope for a better future is sensible. The easiest way to prove this principle is just to use a hypothetical and go to extremes. You are out with, 20 of your friends, and you happen to get captured by a person who finds absolute joy in killing people. And so you're all tied up there in a row, and he takes out a gun and shoots one after the other your friends in the face as they die. And you're just watching your friends one after the other die. Then you're like, 11th in line. And as the person gets to you and is about to shoot you in the face, they have a heart attack and die. At that very point, you should be celebrating that person's death and be thankful that you're still alive, and be so joyous that you and your other friends get to live, and you hope for a happier future that you can somehow get out of there and not die. There are people right now who are currently in captivity, being forced to be a slave. As hard as that to imagine that can still be a thing that happens in this world, that is true. If the people who are keeping those people in captivity die, the person who was enslaved should be so happy that that person died. What's debatable is not whether this principle is true, that there are some cases where it's justifiable to celebrate the death of a truly terrible human being, but who is actually deserving of celebrating and in what context. And I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, right? There are clearly people in this world who have been viewed as either virtuous or malicious by different groups, and therefore some have wept for a person's death and some have cheered it. I'm not making a stance on that. I'm not discussing the overall harm of any particular person in all of history. I'm merely pointing out that yes, there's obviously situations where this response to a death is entirely justified. There are certain people who have made foreign policy decisions that have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, and seemingly the person did this knowing it would cause the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for the families of those who died, or even those in those countries, to celebrate the death of such a person. Let's be vague. Right? Certainly the problem with this is it leads to things like this. Where was this person? I believe this post is actively working to harm others for your own ideological benefit. Do you see where this goes now? I don't actually think that person believes that, but if they did sincerely believe that, in their mind, it would very much so be justifiable to celebrate my death, assuming that you believed that my death would result in less harm and a better hope for the future. And that could depend on your other perceptions of me, as if I cause overall harm, and also the context of how I die, right? It can be totally possible that how I die can represent like a greater harm for humanity. Like I die from a virus that's going around. You probably shouldn't celebrate that I'm dying there because, everyone else might die. But that's not the point, right? The point isn't to make a wide judgment as to who can be celebrated and on what grounds. Merely just point out that clearly there has to be some context where that can be justified. Or rather, it's hard to have an idea of values and morals where it can't be justified at some point. I can go even more controversial if you like. This next statement, he says, "You're using massive platform to encourage political violence due to a difference in worldview." There are clearly times where violence is a justified response to someone's difference in worldview. If, for example, a person had the worldview that I, Matthew Judge, should be shot in the face and die, and the only way to prevent that would be me to engage in violence, that would be entirely justified. There are clearly some worldviews out there where the person legitimately believes that other people should be slaughtered en masse, or should be enslaved, or put in cages, or whatever, who exist with people who have views that will legitimately cause other people to be harmed en masse. And those people who are to be harmed en masse, in some context, it would make perfect sense to engage in violence in defense of oneself. I don't think that's usually the best option, and the situations where that can be applied are obviously very extreme. But I hold a controversial opinion in regards to America, for example, where the reason I condemn those who did the insurrection on January 6th, or the actual report and stuff that came out from the government's self-assessment was fucking wild. Some of the shit these people did was insane. What's condemnable about that is that they were wrong, that they were taken in by a con man, that they were fed false information. If they had been right, where the government had been taken over by a tyrannical body that was existing for the purposes of undermining democracy, and there was literally no other option that they had to maintain democracy than to engage in violence against the very institutions that at one point defended democracy, then that would have made sense. There is clearly a point where your government can get so corrupt and so unable to function, and it can be taken over by such malicious actors that violence would be justified. It's simply in the case of January 6th, it wasn't justified at that point because it was false information inspiring such things. There are very obviously, speaking to what this person is saying, there's clearly very obviously things that I could engage in where I would argue it is justifiable to engage in violence upon me. I don't know, like I go literally insane and I develop a virus in which if I unleashed it, it would kill all of humanity. I would hope in such a circumstance that people would engage in violence upon me to prevent me from doing that. You know, it's there is this idea I once heard where a person was discussing their views. There were a branch of libertarian. I don't know, like there's different ideas related to that, but the statement they made was, it may be true that my goals and values would lead to the destruction of society. I don't care. That's what I believe is right. And to this day, it's been over 10 years since I heard that, and it's still one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Some people seem to believe that some things are inherently valuable to the point where there can be no limitation ever possibly conceivably put upon them. In my view, all values stem from goals. And if something you value no longer works to achieve that goal, you should discard it as no longer valuable. There is nothing that I find so valuable that I can't think of a hypothetical circumstance or a scenario, regardless of how absurd, where that thing would no longer be valuable to me. But to conclude this, I ended it with a joke where I said, this post was about griefers in GTA Online, by the way, at FBI. I laughed at this for like a full solid 5 minutes. I only got 100 likes. That sucks. Like, I just think some people have never been put into circumstances where they have to actually reflect on why they value the things that they do and how much their positions on any issue can really be justified. What was that book I remember, The Righteous Mind, that I read a bazillion years ago and I used to bring up all the time on stream, where they asked people, like, why do you think X on this issue? And then they would give justifications seemingly on the fly, and the researchers would work to demonstrate that their justifications were false. And then even when the person couldn't think up other reasons why they held that position, they would still maintain that position. They would say, well, this is just what I feel is right. It is very easy to hold the position that violence is never justified to achieve any particular ends, political or otherwise, when you've lived a life where you're not being oppressed. And that your life is generally good, that you don't live under some tyrannical governments or, you know, you're not under threat of violence or death every day, right? It's just these ideas where people just can't think outside their own circumstances to conceive of being in a different situation other than what they're in. They don't have empathy. As weird as it is to say that a person's lack of an ability to have empathy prevents them understanding why violence is justified, that is true, I think, in many cases. Hi! Getting to the end of a Viper Rambles episode proves that you like me and my work far more than the average person. Given that, it's possible that you might find value in becoming a YouTube member. Members get early access to all my videos, including Rambles, as well as access to my growing library of re-uploaded deleted videos, 5% off my merch, and the ability to leave comments and feedback before public release, which is incredibly helpful for me and my team. You also get a cute badge next to your name, so I can easily identify you in my comment section and live stream chats, and you can also use all my cute emotes everywhere on the channel. Lastly, after 3 months of being a member, you can submit on my Discord to join my GTA Online crew. Thanks for the consideration, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you enjoy future ones as well.